Sex is not merely a physical instinct, it is a profound psychological force, a language older than words, spoken not with the mouth but with the soul. To reduce it to biology is to strip it of its deeper meaning. For what lives in your body also lives in your dreams, your art, your fears, and your desires. And within your unconscious, that vast invisible realm beneath waking thought, sex is not just an urge. It is a symbol, a message, a metaphor for your deepest truths. We do not merely crave flesh. We crave union, not just with another, but with parts of ourselves we have long abandoned. You may think your sexual thoughts are random or crude, but they are rarely meaningless. In fact, they are often the clearest signal your unconscious can send. The most direct attempt your deeper self makes to get your attention. Think for a moment about the fantasies you never speak of, the ones that feel irrational, inappropriate, or even shameful. Most people push them away, label them immoral or dangerous, but repression does not dissolve truth, it distorts it. And these fantasies, if understood, may not be about sex at all. They may be about power, about surrender, about longing to be truly seen. They may carry the imprint of wounds that were never healed or gifts that were never claimed. For example, a man once shared that he was tormented by visions of seduction, not because he was promiscuous, but because he had spent his life feeling invisible. As a child, he was ignored. As a husband, he felt emotionally discarded. The mind, unable to receive intimacy in waking life, created it in fantasy. What he wanted was not to conquer, but to be desired. What he needed was not domination, but acknowledgement. The sexual form was simply the clearest picture his unconscious could draw. This is the true nature of the psyche. It does not speak in lectures or logic. It speaks in images, in archetypes, in dreams, and sex is its loudest word. Because sex is not just about pleasure, it is about creation, power, vulnerability, union, and transcendence. It contains within it every aspect of what it means to be alive. The mistake we often make is believing we must eliminate or control our sexual impulses. But the goal is not control. The goal is understanding. You cannot master what you refuse to meet. You cannot transform what you pretend doesn't exist. What you hide in shadow does not disappear. It grows teeth. But what you bring into light becomes an ally. We are taught to fear our desires, especially those that do not fit into polite society. But desire is a compass. It points to what we lack, to what we were denied, to what we secretly need. A woman who dreams of being overwhelmed may not want submission in life. She may want relief from the crushing burden of always having to be strong. A man who fixates on taboo may not be immoral. He may be starved for authenticity in a life that demands perfection. The form may shock us, but the function is human. The unconscious is not evil. It is not wrong. It is ancient and wild, like a forest filled with animals you've never seen before. But every creature in that forest serves a purpose. Every impulse, no matter how strange, is trying to bring you home to something forgotten. Even the fantasies you fear the most, the ones you dare not admit, may hold a sacred message. They may reveal not what you want to do, but what you need to feel. One person may be haunted by the idea of being exposed, another by the idea of being devoured. These are not sins, they are symbols. They are mirrors, reflecting unmet emotional truths. The longing to be known, the ache to be loved not for how well you perform, but for who you truly are beneath all your masks. When you ignore these messages, they do not go away. They mutate. They return in compulsion, in shame, in addiction, in secret lives. But when you have the courage to listen to them, not indulge them blindly, but understand them, something remarkable happens. They soften. They unfold. They begin to tell you a story about yourself you were never allowed to hear. That is the invitation. Not to act on every desire, but to understand where it comes from. Not to silence the inner voice, but to learn its language. Every time you feel a pull towards something that confuses or frightens you, ask not what is wrong with me, but rather, what is this trying to reveal? In truth, the desire for sex often masks a desire for closeness. The pursuit of the erotic may hide the pain of emotional starvation. And behind what seems like lust, there may be an ache for connection, not just with another person, but with the disowned parts of yourself. There was once a man who lived in denial of his desires for decades. Raised in a strict household, he was taught that pleasure was a sin, that discipline was virtue, and that duty was everything. He became successful, respected, even admired, but inside, he was dying. His life felt hollow, his relationships were numb. Eventually, the repressed parts of him began to emerge, not politely, affairs, breakdowns, guilt, confusion. But when he finally sat with those parts, he discovered something profound. All he wanted was to feel alive. His sexuality was not dangerous, it was sacred. It was the only part of him that still remembered how to feel. This story is not unique. It is the story of countless people, quiet, well-behaved people who live according to the rules on the outside, but starve silently on the inside. What they repress is not just sex, but soul, the raw, wild, emotional truth of who they are beneath the persona. You are not here to live a sanitized version of life. You are here to be whole, and wholeness cannot exist without integration. You must make peace with every part of you, the noble and the primal, the disciplined and the desirous, not to justify harm, but to reclaim your truth. So the next time a dream unsettles you or a thought arises that you do not understand, do not run, do not shame yourself, do not pretend. Instead, get curious, get still, ask what your deeper self is trying to tell you, because beneath the image of sex is always something more, a story of longing, of memory, of emotion. And those who are brave enough to listen, not with judgment but with compassion, will find not only insight, but freedom. You are not broken, you are becoming, and even your darkest thoughts can become lanterns, if you dare to walk toward them. What you repress does not vanish, it buries itself in the shadows of your mind, growing roots in silence. It waits, not passively, but actively, reshaping itself, slipping into disguises, finding new paths to emerge. And when what you repress is sexual energy, it does not become sacred by suppression. It becomes twisted, urgent, disguised in forms that confuse and disturb. Many believe that to suppress desire is to rise above it, that to deny the body is to uplift the soul, but nothing could be further from the truth. Denial does not refine desire, it fractures it. And in that fracture, suffering begins. Imagine a river, wild, vast, full of life. If you try to block it, to hold it still, it does not become calm. It rises, it swells, it presses against the dam. If there is no outlet, it leaks through cracks. It carves secret paths through the soil. It floods everything. This is what happens to the sexual current when it is denied. It finds strange ways to escape. It leaks through anger, sudden, unexplainable rage at those who seem free to express what you've buried. It shows up in addiction, not just to sex, but to power, attention, control, substances that numb or stimulate. It transforms into cruelty, the mind's defense against vulnerability, and it wraps itself in shame, the heavy coat worn by those who feel desire but believe they shouldn't. These are not failures of character, they are signs of disconnection, proof that something vital has been cast out of the self, and yet the soul has no intention of forgetting. It keeps calling through symptoms, through longing, through breakdowns that look like chaos but are, in truth, invitations. So many live double lives, not externally, but internally. The person they show to the world, composed, clean, moral, is at war with the one they silence, the desiring one, the wild one, the one who dares to feel. And this war does not stay quiet forever. Sooner or later it erupts, sometimes in public failure, sometimes in private collapse, but always in suffering. A study in 2018 uncovered what the ancient mystics always knew. that when sexuality is repressed, the psyche suffers, anxiety increases, depression deepens. People begin to take dangerous risks, not because they are reckless, but because they are starving. And starvation makes people desperate. The tragedy is not that desire exists. The tragedy is that we are taught to fear it. We label it sinful, dirty, primitive. We bind it in silence, hoping that ignorance will keep us safe. But repression is not virtue. It is fear pretending to be holy. It is control disguised as discipline. And it is passed down generation to generation until someone has the courage to say, I will no longer inherit. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. A woman who flinches at her own reflection. A man who cannot meet his own eyes in the mirror. They are not just victims of trauma. They are casualties of repression. They were never told that their feelings were natural, that their urges were human, that their longings were not dangerous but sacred. And so they buried their truth under layers of performance, hoping that if they looked right, they would be safe. But no one is free until their inner world is honored. You can master every behavior, follow every rule, live a life that earns applause, and still feel empty, because you are living in exile from your true self. Desire is not a flaw. It is not the opposite of goodness. It is a compass, pointing toward what is vital, what is missing, what is calling to be lived. When we suppress it, we don't kill it, we lose our way. There was once a man, quiet, respectable, admired by his community. He never cheated, never drank, never raised his voice. But inside he was crumbling. He felt numb, disconnected. His dreams grew strange, filled with shadows. He began to resent those who laughed too loudly or loved too freely. One day, overwhelmed by despair, he began therapy, not because he thought he had a problem, but because he felt dead inside. What he discovered was this. He had buried his desire so deeply that it had turned into depression, not because he was weak, but because he had been taught that to be good meant to be empty. His journey was not to indulge every impulse, but to reclaim the parts of himself he had cast into the dark. When he finally acknowledged that his longing was not evil, but beautiful, his eyes began to light up again. He was not broken, he had been silenced. We must stop pretending that morality lives in denial. True morality lives in awareness. In asking, with honesty and courage, what is this feeling trying to teach me? What part of me have I exiled? What dream have I deferred for so long that it now knocks on the door disguised as dysfunction? Desire is not your enemy. The refusal to face it is. Healing begins not when you silence the voice inside you, but when you sit beside it and listen. It may speak in riddles at first, in images you do not understand, but beneath every inappropriate thought, every strange attraction, every hidden hunger, there is a story, a memory, a need. Perhaps you were never held as a child. Perhaps you were punished for being curious. Perhaps your body was a battlefield of shame, and now as an adult, your mind recreates those wounds in secret, hoping for resolution. There is no healing in pretending, only in presence. So the next time you feel something rise within you that you don't understand, resist the urge to push it down. Ask, why are you here? What are you trying to show me? What part of me have I abandoned? Because what you repress will not go quietly. But what you embrace with honesty and tenderness can transform. You are not meant to be perfect. You are meant to be whole. And wholeness comes not from cutting out the parts of you that feel too much, but from weaving them into the story of who you are. The mind can lie, the ego can pretend, but the body tells the truth. And when the body speaks in the language of desire, listen, not with fear, but with respect. It may be the first honest conversation you've had with yourself in years. Sexual energy and creative energy are not two forces, they are one, a single river that flows through the psyche, ancient and alive, carrying the essence of life itself. It is the force that makes you want to reach beyond the surface of things, to touch, to shape, to bring something new into being, whether that is a child, a painting, a melody, a movement, or a vision that changes the world. The source is the same. It rises from the same depth. It carries the same fire. This is a truth we rarely speak, and yet we feel it every day. In the restlessness of our spirit, in the ache to be more, to express more, to leave something behind that bears the mark of our soul. You may not call it sex. You may call it passion, inspiration, drive, but its root is sacred, and its direction is yours to choose. Too often we reduce sexuality to the body, forgetting that it begins in the unseen. Before there is touch, there is longing. Before there is desire, there is imagination. The sexual current first stirs in the psyche as hunger for beauty, for meaning, for union with something beyond the self. This is why it is so closely tied to art, to music, to spiritual awakening, because it is not just about release, it is about revelation. Every great artist knows this. Every visionary has felt the burn of that creative tension, the sensation that something wants to be born through them, something wild and wordless, something that does not yet exist. They may not speak of sexuality, but they are deeply intimate with its essence. It moves through their brushstrokes, their symphonies, their manifestos. It is the current that drives creation. Nikola Tesla, a man of profound intellect, famously claimed he chose celibacy to preserve his creative power. He understood that this energy, if not spent in pleasure, could be transmuted into brilliance. Frida Kahlo, by contrast, channeled her desire into her art with raw honesty. Her body, her pain, her passion all laid bare in color and canvas. They were different in method, but united in truth. The energy within must move somewhere. If it is not channeled consciously, it either seeks lower outlets or it stagnates. And when it stagnates, it becomes poison. This is the tragedy of unexpressed passion. When we do not give it shape, it does not disappear. It turns on us. It becomes frustration, resentment, depression. It turns into craving without fulfillment, stimulation without meaning. We become addicted to cheap highs because we've denied ourselves the sacred work of deep creation. We become obsessed with the surface because we've forgotten how to listen to the soul. Your desire is not wrong. It is waiting for you to do something with it, to mold it, shape it, offer it to the world as something only you can give. It might be a book, a business, a garden, a movement, a new way of being in relationship. What matters is not the form. What matters is the direction. Ask yourself, where is my energy going? Is it being scattered on fleeting pleasures that leave me empty, or is it being gathered and focused into something that will live beyond me, something that carries meaning? When your sexual energy has purpose, your life has direction. When it is fused with vision, your actions become charged with power. You are no longer simply chasing sensations. You are guided by something larger, something luminous. Think of how you feel when you are in a state of deep creation. Time disappears, doubt melts. You are fully alive, fully present, fully connected. That is not separate from the sexual current. It is the sexual current, refined and elevated, no longer rooted in the urge to consume, but transformed into the drive to contribute. This is why creative work can feel like falling in love, and why falling in love often inspires creative work. They activate the same part of the soul, the longing to merge, to make, to express the inexpressible. And this is not limited to artists or mystics. Every human being carries the potential for sacred creation. You do not need to be a painter or poet. You only need to be willing to feel deeply and follow the call that rises from within. There is a young man who once came to me, brilliant, but lost. He spent hours online, drowning in images, chasing pleasure he could never hold. He thought he had a discipline problem, but what he really had was an overflow of unchanneled energy. When he began to write, truly right, not to impress but to release what lived in his chest. Something changed. He no longer needed to numb himself. His cravings lessened. His mind grew clearer. Why? Because the river had found its path. We were never meant to repress this energy, only to direct it, to become stewards of it, to understand that it is not just about pleasure, but about power, the power to shape reality, to move hearts, to inspire change. You are a creator, whether you believe it or not. Every choice you make shapes your life. Every word you speak ripples into the world. Every suppressed longing can either corrode you from within or become the source of your greatest contribution. This energy within you is not random. It is your inheritance. It is your responsibility. It is the flame you must learn to tend. So listen to what stirs inside you when you are quiet. Feel the pull towards something you can't yet name. That restlessness is not a problem to solve. It is a signal to follow. It means there is something in you that wants to be born. You do not have to understand it fully. You do not have to justify it to anyone. You only have to honor it, to give it space, to give it breath, to give it form. Because when you do, your life will no longer feel like something happening to you. It will feel like something you are making. And that is what you were always meant to do. Create from the deepest place, from the energy that made you, from the river that still runs, waiting for your hands to guide it. ChatGPT said, "Sexual power is not meant to be erased, nor is it meant to be worshipped blindly. It is not something to run from, nor something to chase without thought. It is meant to be integrated, woven into the tapestry of your identity, not as a force that defines you, but as a current that informs you. You are not just body, and you are not just spirit. You are the meeting point of both. And integration begins when you stop fighting that truth. Too many people swing between extremes. They either suppress their desire until it becomes poison, or they surrender to it until it becomes a prison. But the path to wholeness lies not in denial or indulgence. It lies in understanding. Your desires, however strange or confusing, are not enemies. They are clues, invitations to explore who you are beneath the roles you've been taught to play. They speak in the language of hunger, but they point towards something deeper, something sacred. To integrate sexual energy means to stop running from it and to stop being ruled by it. It means learning to sit with it, to hear it, to ask it what it wants from you, not what it demands of you. It means bringing the light of awareness into the parts of you that have long lived in shadow. And in doing so, you begin to reclaim a part of your soul. You are not a slave to your impulses, but neither are you a machine made only for rational control. There is an animal within you, and there is a divine. You are both, half beast, half God. And the suffering begins when you try to be only one. When you try to live as though you are pure spirit, desire knocks louder. When you try to live as though you are only body, meaning begins to vanish. Only in the marriage of both can you find peace. The most awakened people I have encountered were not those who silenced their sexuality, nor those who chased pleasure without pause. They were those who made peace with their own depth. They stopped asking whether their desires were right or wrong, and instead began asking, what are they trying to teach me? They dared to look at their fantasies not with guilt, but with curiosity. They dared to feel their longing, not to feed it blindly, but to understand its shape. And in that understanding, shame softened. Control gave way to clarity. They stopped treating sexuality as a thing to be solved and began to treat it as a part of the soul to be honored. I remember a woman who came to me burdened by what she called a sex problem. She had spent years caught in a cycle of empty relationships. They began with intensity, ended in confusion, and always left her feeling smaller than before. She hated herself for her needs. She called herself weak. She believed she was broken. But when she began to speak honestly, when she let herself go beneath the surface of those stories, we found something different. She didn't have a sex problem. She had a self-worth problem. Her body had become a bargaining tool, a way to buy closeness, to avoid rejection, to momentarily silence the voice inside that said she was not enough. But sex was never the real hunger. The real hunger was to be seen, to be valued, to be chosen, not just for her body, but for her being. When she realized that, something changed. She began to treat herself not as a product, but as a person, not as a temptation, but as a temple. She began to say no to what drained her and yes to what fed her. And in doing so, she didn't lose her power. She found it. Because when you integrate your sexual energy into your identity, not as something shameful, not as something sacred above all else, but as something deeply human, you begin to walk in the world differently. You carry yourself with a kind of quiet authority, not born of arrogance, but of understanding. You are no longer hiding. You are no longer performing. You are simply whole. And wholeness is power. You begin to realize that your desires are not just about sex. They are about truth. They are the soul's way of trying to tell you what parts of yourself still want to be loved. You begin to see that every craving has a root, and every root has a story. And when you know the story, the craving loses its grip. This is not easy work. It asks you to face the parts of yourself you were taught to fear. It asks you to unlearn shame, to forgive your past, to feel emotions you buried long ago. But it is worth it, because on the other side of that work is freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want whenever you want, but the deeper freedom of no longer being at war with yourself. You stop needing to prove anything. You stop needing to hide. You stop needing to chase. Love from a different place. Move through the world with a different rhythm, not one driven by lack, but one sustained by alignment. Your fantasies no longer frighten you. Your urges no longer confuse you. You understand them. You hold them. You listen to what they ask, and you decide from your highest self what you will do with them. This is integration. It is the act of turning chaos into clarity, of meeting the animal in you, not with a whip, but with compassion, of holding the fire not in your bare hands, but in a vessel strong enough to contain it. You become that vessel, and in doing so, you become something rare, not perfect, not pure, but powerful, because power, real power, is not found in domination or denial. It is found in depth, in knowing yourself so well that nothing can be used against you, in honoring every part of who you are, the holy, the haunted, the hungry, and letting them sit at the same table. This is not the path for the faint of heart, but it is the path for those who are tired of the performance, tired of the emptiness, tired of the lie that they must choose between desire and dignity. You do not have to choose. You only have to integrate. And when you do, you will remember your sexuality was never a curse. It was never a sin. It was the voice of your soul asking you to come home.